The lecture hall buzzed with quiet chatter as cadets from across the galaxy settled into their seats. Zixtar adjusted his crystalline form to better absorb the morning light streaming through the viewport. His body sparkled like living diamond as data patterns flowed across his surface. Beside him, Vorth checked his honor blade for the third time that morning, the massive Caraxian's tusks gleaming as he nodded respectfully to passing classmates. On Zixtar's other side, Nath's ethereal form flickered slightly, the young being's energy field pulsing with nervous excitement about their advanced military history class. Professor Kelm entered the room with his usual brisk pace, his forearms carrying data tablets while his eye stalks swiveled to observe the students. The Vorthan instructor was known for his strict adherence to facts and his impressive knowledge of galactic conflicts spanning the last 3 centuries. Today we discuss the Hegemony Wars, Professor Kelm announced, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's speakers. One of the most decisive conflicts in galactic history. The Caraxian Empire contributed 73 battle fleets. The Crystalline Collective provided strategic analysis that proved crucial to victory. The Ethereals managed communications across 16 sectors. Vorth straightened with pride at the mention of his people's contribution. His species valued military honor above all else, and the Hegemony Wars were considered their finest hour. Zixtar's pattern shifted to display approval as well. The crystalline strategic methods had become standard teaching material across the galaxy. The war lasted 8 years, Professor Kelm continued, pulling up holographic displays of massive space battles. Casualties numbered in the millions. Resource expenditure nearly bankrupted 12 worlds. But we achieved victory through cooperation and determination. A student near the back raised a tentacle. Professor, what about the Human Prohibition Accords? Weren't humans involved in the Hegemony Wars? The room fell silent. Neth's energy field dimmed with curiosity. Even the usually focused Zixtar paused his data processing to listen. Professor Kelm's eye stalks swiveled nervously. The Human Prohibition Accords are a separate matter entirely. Humans are banned from all galactic military operations under Federation law. They lack the sophistication required for modern warfare. Vorth's tusks clicked together in confusion. But Professor, humans have faster-than-light travel. They have energy weapons. How can they be too primitive? Their technology is adequate, Professor Kelm replied quickly. But their military thinking is outdated. They rely on crude tactics that have no place in civilized warfare. The Federation determined long ago that human involvement in conflicts would be counterproductive. Zixtar's patterns shifted to display skepticism. His species prided themselves on logical analysis, and something about the professor's explanation didn't compute properly. Professor, if I may ask, what specific tactical failures led to this determination? Professor Kelm's forearm shuffled his tablets unnecessarily. The details are classified, Cadet Zixtar. Suffice it to say that human military doctrine is incompatible with Federation standards. Now let us return to the Caraxian fleet movements in the Outer Rim campaign. But the 3 friends found it difficult to concentrate on the rest of the lecture. Nith's energy field kept flickering with questions. Vorth's honor-bound nature rebelled against accepting vague explanations. And Zixtar's analytical mind refused to process incomplete data as satisfactory. After class, they gathered in the cafeteria aboard Kepler Station. The massive space station housed the Galactic Military Academy, where the best and brightest from dozens of species learned the art of interstellar warfare. Through the large viewports, they could see training ships conducting mock battles against the backdrop of distant stars. Something doesn't add up, Zixtar said, his crystalline form projecting mathematical equations. If humans are too primitive for warfare, why have specific accords banning them? You don't write treaties to exclude people who can't participate anyway. Vorth nodded, his massive frame leaning forward over his meal. In Caraxian culture, when warriors speak in circles around a topic, it means they're hiding shame. The professor was definitely hiding something. Nith's form brightened with excitement. I've been thinking the same thing. And did you notice how quickly he moved away from the subject? That's not like Professor Kelm at all. He usually loves to elaborate on historical details. So what do we do about it? Vorth asked, his honor-bound nature demanding action. Zixtar's patterns shifted to display a complex flowchart. The Academy's database contains general information about the Human Prohibition Accords, but all detailed records are classified. However, there are references to archived materials in the restricted section. The restricted section is off-limits to cadets, Nith pointed out. though their energy field pulsed with intrigue rather than concern. Off limits, but not impossible to access, Zixtar replied. My analytical protocols include security system evaluation. I've been studying the Academy's network architecture for weeks. Forth's eyes gleamed with the prospect of a challenge. Are you suggesting we break into classified archives? I'm suggesting we seek truth, Zixtar corrected. If humans are genuinely inferior warriors, the records will prove it. If they're hiding something else, we deserve to know what it is. Nith's form flickered rapidly with nervous energy. This could get us expelled from the Academy. Living with incomplete data is worse than facing consequences for seeking truth, Zixtar stated with typical crystalline certainty. Forth stood up. His decision made. Then we investigate. When do we begin? Tonight, Zixtar replied, already calculating optimal infiltration routes. The night shift has minimal security personnel, and I've identified a window of opportunity during the third shift rotation. They spent the rest of the day preparing. Zixtar mapped the security systems and identified access points. Vorth studied patrol schedules and guard rotations. Nith practiced manipulating electronic locks with their energy fields. As the station's artificial night cycle began, they met near the Academy's central archive complex. The corridors were dimly lit, with only emergency lighting guiding their way. Zixtar led them through maintenance passages he'd discovered in the station schematics. The restricted section is through here, he whispered, his crystalline form muffled to prevent light reflection. Nith, can you handle the security door? Nith approached the heavy door marked with Federation security warnings. Their ethereal form extended into the lock mechanism, carefully manipulating the electronic components. After several tense minutes, the door clicked open. Inside, rows of data storage units stretched into the darkness. Zixtar's form provided gentle illumination as they searched for the human prohibition records. Most of the files dealt with Federation military secrets, classified weapons research, and diplomatic incidents. Here, Forth announced quietly, pointing to a section marked Species Integration Failures, Human Files. Zixtar accessed the first data unit, his crystalline structure interfacing directly with the archive system. Information flowed across his surface as he processed the initial files. This is strange, he murmured. The earliest records describe humans as promising candidates for Federation membership. They were invited to join our military alliance. Nith's energy field dimmed with confusion. If they were invited to join, what changed? Zixtar continued processing data, his patterns shifting rapidly as he absorbed information. According to these files, first contact with humans occurred 200 years ago. They were classified as a Type 7 developing civilization, with significant potential for military cooperation. What happened next? Forth asked, his warrior instinct sensing that something important was coming. Zixtar's form suddenly blazed brighter as he accessed a particularly large file. The Void Swarm invasion of Earth. This appears to be the first major military conflict involving humans. The three friends gathered closer as Zixtar projected the historical records into the air around them. What they saw would challenge everything they thought they knew about human military capabilities. The holographic display shimmered to life above Zixtar's crystalline form, showing star maps and fleet movements from 2 centuries ago. The 3 cadets stared in fascination as the archived records began to tell a story very different from what they'd expected. The Void Swarm, Nith whispered, their energy field flickering with recognition. Every species in the galaxy fears them, Forth nodded grimly. The Void Swarm was legendary among warriors, a hive mind species that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty space behind. They had terrorized the galaxy for over 1,000 years, appearing without warning to devour civilizations before vanishing back into the dark between stars. According to these records, Zixtar said, his patterns shifting as he processed the data. The Void Swarm targeted Earth in the year 2387. The Federation had just made contact with humanity 3 months earlier. The display showed Earth, a blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. Around it, ominous dark shapes began to appear, the characteristic bioships of the Void Swarm, each one the size of a city and filled with millions of hungry creatures. The Federation immediately offered assistance, Zixtar continued. Admiral Corvin of the 5th Fleet sent this message to Earth's leaders. A new hologram appeared, a Coraxian admiral much like Vorth, but wearing the elaborate ceremonial armor of high command. His recorded message played in the archive's speakers. People of Earth, the Void Swarm threatens your world. We have fought these creatures for centuries. Accept our help, and we will deploy our full military might to defend your system. Together we can drive them back. The three cadets waited for the human response. When it came, they were surprised by its brevity. Thank you for your generous offer, Admiral Corvin. We appreciate the Federation's friendship. However, we will handle this matter ourselves. We ask only that you keep your ships at a safe distance to observe. Forth's tusks clicked in disbelief. They refused help against the Void Swarm? That's suicide. That's what the Federation thought too, Zixtar replied, accessing more files. Admiral Corvin tried to convince them 3 more times. Each time, humans politely declined assistance. The holographic display shifted to show Federation observer ships positioned at the edge of the solar system. From their perspective, the cadets watched as hundreds of Void Swarm bioships approached Earth. The Federation expected Earth to fall within days, Zixtar narrated as the display updated. Standard Void Swarm tactics involved overwhelming planetary defenses through sheer numbers. No single world had ever successfully defended against a full swarm attack. The first contact occurred near Earth's moon. Human ships appeared on the display, smaller than Federation vessels but moving with surprising coordination. The cadets watched as the initial engagement began. This is strange, Nith observed, their energy field pulsing with confusion. Why are the human ships retreating? They're leading the Void Swarm away from Earth. Not retreating, Zixtar corrected as more data flowed across his surface. Look at the formation patterns. They're drawing the swarm into a specific configuration. What happened next left the 3 cadets speechless. The human fleet suddenly split into smaller groups, each group attacking different parts of the Void Swarm from unexpected angles. But instead of trying to destroy the bioships directly, they seemed to be targeting specific locations on each vessel. They're attacking the navigation clusters, Vorth realized, his warrior training helping him identify the tactic. But why? Damaging navigation doesn't kill the ships. The answer became clear as the battle continued. With their navigation systems damaged, the Void Swarm bioships began colliding with each other. The precise coordination that made them so deadly dissolved into chaos, as they could no longer communicate effectively. The humans turned the swarm's numbers against itself, Zixtar marveled, his analytical mind appreciating the elegant strategy. Instead of fighting hundreds of ships, they created hundreds of separate confused targets, but the real surprise came when human ground forces engaged the creatures that had already landed on Earth. The Federation observers had expected to witness the usual horror of Void Swarm feeding frenzies. Instead, they recorded something unprecedented. Listen to this observer report, Zixtar said, projecting an audio file from a crystalline analyst aboard Admiral Corvin's flagship. Day 3 of the Earth invasion. Human ground tactics continued to defy standard military doctrine. Rather than establishing defensive perimeters, human forces are actively hunting individual swarm clusters. They appear to be studying the creature's behavior patterns during combat. The audio continued with growing bewilderment in the analyst's voice. Day 7. Humans have begun using captured swarm creatures against their own kind. This should be impossible. The Void Swarm's hive mind makes them immune to such tactics. Somehow humans have found a way to disrupt the psychic connection. Nith's form brightened with amazement. They figured out how to break the hive mind? That's incredible. Day 15, the recording went on. Human tactics have evolved again. They're no longer fighting the Void Swarm directly. Instead, they've created situations where swarm creatures attack empty locations, while human forces strike from completely unexpected directions. It's as if they're thinking several moves ahead of the hive mind itself. Vorth leaned forward, his warrior instincts fascinated by what he was hearing. How is that possible? The hive mind processes information faster than any individual consciousness. Day 23. The analyst's voice continued, now filled with something approaching awe. Humans have begun what they call psychological warfare against the swarm. They're deliberately triggering fear responses in creatures that supposedly cannot feel fear. The hive mind appears to be confused by this approach. The recording ended, leaving the 3 cadets in stunned silence. Zixtar accessed the final battle reports, projecting them above his crystalline form. The war lasted exactly 6 months, he announced. The shortest campaign against the Void Swarm in recorded galactic history. Previous conflicts had lasted anywhere from 10 to 30 years. How did it end? Nith asked. their energy field flickering with anticipation. Zixtar's patterns shifted as he found the concluding reports. The humans didn't just defeat the Void Swarm, they captured the primary hive ship intact. Then they did something no one had ever attempted before. The display showed a massive Void Swarm bioship, its dark surface covered with human vessels like antibodies surrounding a virus. Around it, the remaining swarm ships had stopped moving entirely. They reprogrammed the hive mind, Zixtar said, his voice filled with disbelief. Humans somehow gained access to the swarm's central consciousness and changed its basic directives. The entire fleet simply left. Left? Vorth asked. They just gave up and flew away? According to the final report, the Void Swarm's new programming included a complete prohibition against attacking any world inhabited by humans. They're still out there in the galaxy, but they avoid human space entirely. The three friends sat in the darkness of the archive, trying to process what they'd learned. Everything they thought they knew about human military capabilities had been wrong. This doesn't explain why they're banned from Federation conflicts, Nith pointed out. If anything, these records suggest humans should be leading our military forces. Zixtar's form dimmed as he accessed more files. There are additional records here. Other conflicts where humans served as military advisors to Federation forces. Perhaps those will explain the prohibition. As he began loading the next set of files, Vorth shifted uncomfortably. His honor-bound nature was struggling with the implications of what they'd discovered. If humans could defeat the Void Swarm so easily, why did they let the rest of us struggle against them for centuries? He asked. It was a question that would haunt all three cadets as they delved deeper into the restricted archives. The more they learned about human military capabilities, the more disturbing the implications became. Zixtar's crystalline form pulsed with new data as he accessed the next series of archived files. The three cadets huddled closer together in the darkness of the restricted archives, their minds still reeling from what they'd learned about humanity's victory over the Void Swarm. These files cover the period after the Void War, Zixtar announced, his patterns shifting to display new information. Humans were officially welcomed into the Galactic Federation as military advisors. Military advisors? Nith questioned, their energy field flickering with confusion. After defeating the Void Swarm single-handedly, they were only given advisory positions? According to these records, it was humanity's choice, Zixtar replied, processing the diplomatic correspondence. They claimed they preferred to help from the background, rather than take direct command roles. The first file detailed the Rigel border conflict, a territorial dispute between the Federation and an aggressive species called the Thorak Empire. The conflict had been ongoing for 2 years with no clear resolution, when human advisors were assigned to the Federation fleet. Listen to this report from Admiral Vexthon, Zixtar said, projecting the ethereal commander's voice into the archive chamber. The human advisor, Colonel Martinez, arrived yesterday. He spent exactly 47 minutes reviewing our tactical assessments before declaring our entire strategy fundamentally flawed. When pressed for details, he simply said we were fighting their war instead of our own. Vorth's tusks clicked with interest. What did he mean by that? The recording continued. Colonel Martinez has proposed what he calls asymmetric engagement protocols. Instead of matching Thorak fleet movements, he suggests we force them to respond to our initiatives. He's asked for detailed intelligence on Thorak supply lines, communication networks, and what he terms psychological pressure points. The conflict ended 3 weeks later, Zixtar noted, accessing the final reports. Complete Federation victory with minimal casualties. How? Nith asked, their form brightening with curiosity. Zixtar projected the battle records. Humans convinced the Federation to attack Thorak mining operations instead of military targets. When the Thorak fleet moved to defend their mines, humans advised hitting their communication relays. When they tried to coordinate a response, humans had Federation forces target their supply convoys. The three cadets watched as the holographic display showed the systematic collapse of Thorak resistance. Each Federation attack seemed small and insignificant, but together they created a cascade of failures that left the Thorak Empire unable to function as a military force. The Thorak surrendered after their entire command structure fell apart. Zixtar concluded. They couldn't coordinate between their fleets, couldn't resupply their ships, and couldn't communicate with their home worlds. Brilliant strategy, Vorth admitted grudgingly. But I still don't see why this would lead to humans being banned from military service. Zixtar accessed the next file, his patterns shifting to display concern. This report is from the Thorak peace negotiations. Listen to what Admiral Vexthon wrote about the human advisor's behavior. The voice projection resumed, but now the ethereal admiral sounded troubled. Colonel Martinez attended the surrender ceremony. When the Thorak commander asked about prisoner exchanges and territorial concessions, the human laughed. He told the Thorak that they had fundamentally misunderstood what had happened to them. The recording paused, then continued with obvious unease. The human explained that the Federation hadn't been trying to defeat the Thorak Empire. They had been dismantling it piece by piece, ensuring it could never threaten anyone again. He said, and I quote, "We don't fight wars to win battles. We fight wars to prevent future wars." Nith's energy field dimmed with uncertainty. That sounds reasonable. Why would that disturb the Admiral? Because of what the human said next, Zixtar replied, accessing more of the report. Colonel Martinez told the Thorak commander that their empire no longer existed. Their mining colonies had been permanently occupied, their communication networks had been seized by Federation forces, and their military shipyards had been converted to civilian use. That's thorough, Vorth said slowly, his warrior instincts recognizing something troubling in the human approach. The Thorak commander asked what would happen to their people. Zixtar continued. The human replied that they were welcome to become Federation citizens, but their empire was gone forever. When asked if this was how humans always fought wars, Colonel Martinez said yes. The archive chamber fell silent as the three cadets absorbed this information. Zixtar accessed several more conflict reports, each following a similar pattern. Human advisors would arrive, quickly analyze the situation, then propose strategies that didn't just defeat enemies but eliminated them as future threats. Look at this pattern, Zixtar said, projecting a summary across his crystalline surface. The Kalari Rebellion lasted 4 months with human advisors instead of the predicted 4 years. Result: complete dissolution of rebel leadership structure. The Nexus piracy crisis, he continued, ended in 6 weeks instead of ongoing raids. Result: pirate organizations permanently disbanded, their ships converted to Federation patrol vessels. The Outer Rim separatist movement, Zixtar concluded, resolved in 2 months. Result: separatist ideology abandoned after human advisors convinced entire populations that independence was economically impossible. Vorth shifted uncomfortably. These victories are impressive, but something feels wrong about them. The psychological evaluation reports explain why, Zixtar said, accessing a new set of files marked with Federation Medical Corps insignia. Multiple species began requesting that human advisors be removed from their sectors. The first psychological report came from a Coraxian general who had worked with human advisors during the Kalari Rebellion. His voice carried an unusual tremor for a member of Vorth's warrior species. The humans don't fight like warriors. They fight like exterminators. When I suggested capturing rebel leaders for honorable combat, the human advisor looked at me as if I was speaking nonsense. He said, "We're not here to prove who's stronger. We're here to make sure this never happens again." The report continued with growing distress. By the end of the campaign, there were no rebel leaders left to capture. The humans had systematically identified every person with leadership potential in the rebel organization and found ways to either convert them to Federation loyalty or remove them from positions of influence. It was thorough beyond any military doctrine I've ever encountered. Nith's form flickered with unease. That doesn't sound like normal military victory. The psychological evaluations get worse, Zixtar warned, accessing reports from other species. An ethereal commander described working with humans as watching surgical precision applied to the complete elimination of threats. A crystalline analyst wrote that human military thinking reduces complex political situations to simple binary outcomes, complete success or unacceptable failure. The most disturbing report came from a joint Federation task force that had worked with human advisors on multiple campaigns. The commanding officer, a respected Vorthan general, had submitted a formal request that humans be excluded from all future military operations in his sector. Humans don't understand the concept of acceptable, Losses or limited objectives, the general's report stated. When we explained that our goal was to pressure the enemy into negotiations, they asked why we weren't planning to permanently solve the problem instead. When we said that destroying our enemies completely would destabilize the region, they showed us detailed plans for managing that instability. The report's conclusion chilled the 3 cadets. Working with human advisors has convinced me that they view warfare differently than any other species in the Federation. They don't fight to achieve political goals. They fight to eliminate the possibility of future conflict. This approach is terrifyingly effective, but it fundamentally changes the nature of warfare itself. Zixtar's pattern shifted to display the final summary data. Over a 15-year period, human advisors achieved a 100% success rate in military operations. 0 defeats, minimal casualties, and permanent resolution of every conflict they were involved in. That's perfect, Nith said weakly. Yes, Zixtar agreed, his tone suggesting that perfection might not be a good thing. And that's exactly why other species began to fear them. Vorth stood up abruptly, his massive form pacing in the narrow archive space. I understand now. It's not that humans are too primitive for modern warfare, it's that they're too good at it. But there's more, Zixtar said, accessing one final set of files. The records from the hegemony crisis. This is where humanity's military involvement ended permanently. As he began loading the most classified files in the archive, all 3 cadets sensed they were about to discover something that would change their understanding of warfare forever. The archive chamber seemed to grow colder as Zixtar accessed the most heavily classified files in the Federation database. His crystalline form dimmed as layers of security protocols challenged his intrusion, but his analytical capabilities eventually broke through each barrier. The hegemony crisis, he announced quietly. This file is marked with the highest possible security classification. Even accessing it is considered an act of treason. Nith's energy field flickered nervously. Maybe we should stop here. If this information is that sensitive... No, Vorth interrupted, his warrior's honor demanding truth regardless of consequences. We've come this far. We need to know what really happened. Zixtar's pattern shifted as the files began to load. The hegemony was a militaristic empire that controlled nearly a third of the galaxy. They had been expanding aggressively for 50 years, conquering worlds and enslaving entire species. The holographic display materialized above them, showing a vast section of the galaxy colored in ominous red. Hundreds of star systems marked with hegemony control symbols stretched across multiple sectors. The Federation had been fighting them for decades, Zixtar continued, processing the historical data. Stalemate after stalemate, the hegemony was too powerful to defeat, but not powerful enough to completely crush Federation resistance. Where were the humans during all this? Nith asked. Earth had declared neutrality, Zixtar replied, his form displaying diplomatic correspondence. Listen to this message from the Human Colonial Council to the Federation High Command. A new voice projection filled the chamber, calm, measured, and distinctly human. The hegemony conflict is a political dispute between sovereign governments. While we sympathize with Federation casualties, humanity has no interest in participating in galactic power struggles. We ask that both sides respect human space and leave our colonies out of your war. Vorth's tusks clicked with confusion. They refused to help against the hegemony? After everything the Federation had done for them? The Federation made 17 separate requests for human military assistance, Zixtar confirmed. Each time humans politely declined. They maintained strict neutrality, even as the hegemony conquered world after world. The display shifted to show Federation fleet movements, each engagement marked with casualty reports and territorial losses. The war was going badly. Several member species had been completely overrun, their populations enslaved or worse. Then something changed, Zixtar said, his patterns becoming more agitated as he processed new data. The hegemony attacked a human colony world called New Geneva. The holographic display zoomed in on a small blue world in what had been neutral human space. Around it, massive hegemony battlecruisers moved in attack formation. According to these records, the hegemony commander sent this message to New Geneva before the attack, Zixtar announced, projecting another voice, harsh and arrogant. Humans of New Geneva, your neutrality is an insult to hegemony strength. You will surrender your world and submit to hegemony rule. or you will be destroyed as an example to others who think they can remain outside our empire's reach." The colony's response was brief, Zixtar noted, switching to a recording from New Geneva's planetary governor. "We are peaceful civilians under the protection of the Human Colonial Council. We have no military forces and pose no threat to your empire. Please reconsider this action." "The hegemony fleet opened fire anyway," Zixtar continued, his crystalline form now displaying images of orbital bombardment. New Geneva was completely destroyed. 4 million human civilians died in the attack. The 3 cadets watched in horror as the holographic display showed the death of an entire world. The hegemony hadn't just conquered New Geneva. They had deliberately targeted civilian population centers, making it clear that this was about sending a message rather than gaining territory. Earth's response came 48 hours later, Zixtar said, accessing the human government's official statement. The calm voice they had heard before returned, but now it carried an edge that made all 3 cadets uncomfortable. "The hegemony empire has committed an act of genocide against 4 million innocent human beings. This action has moved our conflict beyond the realm of politics into something much more personal. Effective immediately, humanity is withdrawing its neutrality and declaring total war against the hegemony empire." "Total war?" Nith questioned. "What does that mean?" "The Federation was about to find out," Zixtar replied grimly. "Listen to this emergency communication from Admiral Corvin to Federation High Command." The familiar voice of the elderly Caraxian admiral filled the chamber, but now he sounded deeply concerned. "Human battle fleets have appeared in 7 sectors simultaneously. They're not responding to our coordination requests or following standard Federation military protocols. When I asked their fleet commander about battle plans, he told me that humans don't make battle plans, they make extinction plans." Forth leaned forward, his warrior instincts sensing something unprecedented in the human approach. "What did he mean by extinction plans?" "The first hegemony fleet encountered human forces 3 days later," Zixtar explained, projecting battle records onto his crystalline surface. "The engagement lasted exactly 18 minutes. 18 minutes? Nith gasped.
How is that possible?
Hegemony battle fleets were among the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. "Watch," Zixtar said simply, displaying the tactical recordings. The 3 cadets observed as human ships engaged the hegemony fleet in what initially appeared to be conventional space combat. But something was wrong with the human tactics. Instead of trying to destroy enemy ships, they seemed to be targeting very specific systems on each vessel. "They're disabling weapons and engines," Vorth noted, "but leaving life support intact. That's not a military victory," Nith observed. "Those ships can be repaired and return to fight another day." "Keep watching," Zixtar advised. The disabled hegemony ships found themselves surrounded by human vessels. But instead of being destroyed or captured, something else happened. The human ships began broadcasting directly into the hegemony vessels. "They're transmitting data," Zixtar explained. "Detailed information about what happened to New Geneva. Images of the 4 million dead civilians. Records of the hegemony commander's statements about making examples of neutral worlds." "Why would they do that?" Nith asked, confused. "Because," Zixtar replied, his pattern showing the results of the human broadcasts. "The hegemony fleet crews mutinied. When they saw exactly what their empire had done to innocent civilians, they turned against their own officers." The holographic display showed hegemony ships changing their identification signals, joining the human fleet instead of fighting it. Within hours, an entire hegemony battle group had switched sides. This pattern repeated across the galaxy, Zixtar continued, accessing more battle reports. Humans didn't destroy hegemony fleets, they converted them. Every engagement ended with hegemony forces joining the human campaign. That's impossible," Vorth protested. "Military forces don't just change sides in the middle of a war. They do when they're shown the truth about what they're fighting for," Zixtar replied. Humans had spent months documenting every hegemony atrocity, every act of genocide, every enslaved population. They used this information as a weapon more powerful than any energy cannon. The scope of the human campaign became clear as Zixtar displayed the strategic overview. Human forces weren't following conventional military doctrine at all. Instead of capturing territory or destroying enemy forces, they were systematically dismantling the hegemony's ability to function as a civilization. They attacked infrastructure, not armies, Zixtar explained. Communication networks, supply lines, administrative centers. But they also did something else. They liberated every enslaved population they encountered and armed them with weapons captured from hegemony forces. The hegemony empire collapsed from within. Zixtar continued, his voice filled with awe at the scope of human strategic thinking. Former slaves became liberation armies. Hegemony fleet crews became human allies. Within 18 months, the most powerful empire in galactic history had simply ceased to exist. What happened to the hegemony leadership? Forth asked, though his warrior's instincts already suspected the answer. Zixtar's form dimmed as he accessed the final battle reports. They were hunted down individually by human special forces and turned over to the populations they had enslaved. Humans called it justice through accountability. In the aftermath, Nith pressed. The human fleet commander sent this message to Federation High Command when the war ended, Zixtar said. Projecting one final recording, the human voice returned. But now it carried a tone that chilled all three cadets to their cores. The hegemony empire has been permanently dissolved. Their military forces have been disbanded, their enslaved populations have been liberated, and their leadership has been held accountable for their crimes. We want to make one thing absolutely clear to the galaxy. We tried to stay out of your political conflicts. You made it personal when you murdered 4 million of our people. This is what happens when you make it personal with humans. The archive chamber fell into complete silence as the implications of what they had learned settled over the three friends. Humans hadn't just won a war, they had completely erased their enemy from existence. Now the final file hung in the holographic display like a dark star, its classification markers more severe than anything the three cadets had encountered before. Zixtar's crystalline form flickered uncertainly as he prepared to access humanity's deepest secret. This is it, he whispered. The actual human prohibition accords. Everything we've learned so far has been leading to this moment. Nith's energy field pulsed weakly. After what we've seen, I'm not sure I want to know what's in that file. Forth straightened his massive frame, his warrior's honor demanding truth regardless of how terrible it might be. We've come this far. We have to see it through. Zixtar's pattern shifted as the final security barriers fell away, revealing the most classified document in Federation history. What they found there would shake their understanding of the galaxy itself. The date on this file is 6 months after the end of the Hegemony War, Zixtar announced. It's marked as a formal diplomatic proposal from the Human Colonial Council to the Federation High Command. The familiar human voice filled the archive chamber one last time, but now it carried a weight of responsibility that made all three cadets listen intently. To the leadership of the Galactic Federation, the recording began. We are writing to request a formal prohibition on human participation in all future military conflicts involving Federation member species. The three friends exchanged glances of complete confusion. This wasn't what they had expected at all. We're not asking to be excluded from galactic society, the human voice continued. We wish to maintain peaceful relations, continue scientific cooperation, and participate in cultural exchanges. But we are formally requesting that humanity be banned from all military operations, conflicts, and wars involving other species. They requested their own prohibition? Nuith gasped, their energy field brightening with shock. Zixtar accessed more of the document, his analytical mind struggling to process what he was reading. The reasoning is outlined in detail here. Listen to this section. The human speaker's voice resumed with obvious careful consideration of each word. During our recent military involvement in galactic affairs, we have come to realize that human military doctrine is fundamentally incompatible with the concept of civilized warfare as understood by other species. When other species fight wars, they do so with political objectives, territorial goals, or resource acquisition in mind. You fight until your objectives are achieved or until the costs become too high to continue. This approach allows for negotiated settlements, prisoner exchanges, and the possibility of future peace between former enemies. Humans fight wars differently, the voice continued, and there was something like sadness in the tone. When we commit to military action, we commit to the complete elimination of the threat that forced us to fight. We don't stop when we achieve political goals. We stop when we are certain the problem can never arise again. Vorth's tusks clicked as he began to understand. They're explaining their total warfare doctrine. It gets more specific, Zixtar said, continuing to read from the document. Listen to this analysis of human military psychology. Human military thinking treats every conflict as an existential threat that must be permanently resolved. We cannot engage in limited warfare or acceptable losses, because our species psychologically treats warfare as a binary condition, either complete safety or unacceptable danger. This approach makes us extremely effective at ending conflicts permanently, the voice admitted. But it also makes us extremely dangerous to the concept of galactic civilization itself. We cannot fight limited wars because we don't understand how to stop before our enemies are completely defeated. The recording paused, then continued with what sounded like genuine regret. The hegemony war demonstrated this problem clearly. Other species expected us to stop once the hegemony was defeated militarily. We couldn't stop until the hegemony ceased to exist entirely. The difference between these two outcomes is the difference between civilization and extinction. Knight's form flickered with understanding. They realized they were too dangerous to be allowed to fight. The document includes a detailed psychological analysis, Zixtar noted, accessing additional sections. Humans studied their own military behavior and came to some disturbing conclusions about their species. We have identified what we believe is a fundamental difference between human and non-human approaches to conflict resolution, the recording explained. Other species view warfare as diplomacy by extreme means, a way to force negotiations when peaceful methods fail. Humans view warfare as the complete failure of diplomacy, a situation where negotiation is no longer possible and only the total victory of one side can restore peace. This means that when humans fight, we fight to ensure that the defeated party can never be a threat again. That's terrifying, Forth admitted, his warrior's perspective giving him insight into the implications. If humans can't fight limited wars, then every conflict they enter becomes a war of extinction. The proposal includes recommendations for how to handle this. Zixtar continued, displaying more of the document. Humans suggest that they serve the galaxy better as teachers, advisors in non-military roles, and researchers rather than as warriors. We believe humanity can contribute to galactic peace more effectively by helping other species develop better diplomatic solutions to conflicts, rather than by providing military solutions that eliminate conflicts entirely, the human voice explained. Our species appears to have what we term victory conditions that are incompatible with the survival of civilized society. When we achieve complete victory, we create power vacuums that destabilize entire regions of space. When we eliminate threats permanently, we often eliminate the possibility of future growth and learning by the species we defeat. The document's conclusion was perhaps the most disturbing revelation of all. We are requesting this prohibition, not because we are afraid of other species, but because other species should be afraid of us, the voice stated with brutal honesty. Human military capability, combined with human psychology regarding conflict resolution, makes us a threat to the very concept of limited warfare that allows galactic civilization to function. We can win any war we choose to fight, the recording continued. But we cannot fight any war without winning it so completely that we damage the fabric of interstellar society itself. Therefore, we choose not to fight at all. The three cadets sat in stunned silence as the full implications settled over them. Humans hadn't been banned from galactic warfare because they were too weak or primitive. They had been banned because they were too strong and too thorough. There's one more section, Zixtar said quietly, accessing the final part of the document, the Federation's response to humanity's request. A different voice filled the chamber now, the formal tone of a Federation official reading from a prepared statement. After careful consideration of humanity's proposal and extensive analysis of human military capabilities, the Federation accepts your request for voluntary exclusion from military conflicts. We agree that human involvement in warfare poses unacceptable risks to galactic stability. However, the Federation voice continued, we would like to propose an alternative form of service. Would humanity be willing to provide educational services to help other species develop better conflict resolution methods? Your unique perspective on the costs of warfare might help us all learn to avoid the conflicts that lead to military action. The final human response was brief but significant. We accept your proposal. Humanity will serve as teachers and advisors on conflict prevention. rather than as warriors in conflict resolution. We believe this approach serves the galaxy's interests better than our previous military involvement. As the recording ended, a new voice spoke from the archive entrance. And that, cadets, is exactly what we've been doing ever since. The three friends spun around to see a figure standing in the doorway, humanoid in shape, but clearly not from any species they recognized. As he stepped into the chamber's light, they realized with shock that they were looking at their first living human. Professor Chen, Human Cultural Exchange Program, the figure said, with a gentle smile. I've been teaching at this academy for 15 years, helping young warriors like yourselves understand why some battles are won by never fighting them at all. Vorth found his voice first. You're human? Guilty as charged, Professor Chen replied, settling into a chair with casual ease. I was wondering when someone would finally break into these archives. Took longer than I expected, honestly. You're not going to report us? Nith asked, their energy field flickering nervously. For seeking truth? Hardly, the human laughed. That's exactly what I'm here to encourage. Though I should mention that Admiral Torres will want to debrief you tomorrow about security protocols. Zixtar's patterns shifted uncertainly. Are we in trouble? Quite the opposite, Professor Chen assured him. You've learned something that most Federation citizens never discover. That the most dangerous weapon isn't the one that can destroy your enemy, but the one that can destroy yourself. We chose to put our weapon away, he continued, gesturing to the archived files around them. Not because we couldn't use it, but because using